Okay, part 4. Not part 4, part 5, I mean part 5, sorry. The Bible's key. I must head to the temple, I announced upon returning to my room. The Ob has asked me to complete a task for him. I would like to meet with the Gilberta Company while I am there. Lizette's eyes flashed with discontent. If possible, could you come back to the castle tomorrow to have your measurements taken? I plan to ask Lady Florencia's, Lady Charlotte's, and Lady Elvira's personal seamstresses to order your new clothes. Everyone else agreed I couldn't keep relying on garments lent to me by one of my retainers, so I approved the suggestion. To be honest, I didn't have much of a choice. If my new clothes weren't ready in time for the Archduke conference, I would end up in the worst-case scenario of needing to head to the sovereignty without anything to wear. Yeah. Because, yeah, the clothes you were getting made were for your child-sized body. They ain't gonna fit anymore. Lisletta and Audley had put themselves out to set all this up for me. I couldn't let their hard work go to waste. Very well, I said. I shall return to the castle tomorrow. Lady Rosamond, might I join you for the measuring and such? Bertilde asked. I wish to be of use to you. Her voice was tinged with sadness because of my disappearance. She hadn't been able to prove her worth to me at the Royal Academy. I crouched down a little so that I was at her eye level. Wow, you had to crouch down. That's surprise. It's going to be something to get used to. From what Lisletta and Gracia have told me, you did more to help Charlotte with her tea parties than even Melkor's retainers. I am told you were a skilled attendant and that you succeeded in your attempts to spread our duchy's trends. But I can only serve you until my sister's marriage is the Ob. Brunhilde was due to become Ehrenfest's second wife, and it had already been decided that Bertilde would become her apprentice attendant when that happened. Bertilde's desperation to assist me as much as she could before that was absolutely adorable. In that case, I said, tomorrow I would ask you to select and order my summer clothes for me. Even I could tell that my aura and presence have changed. Please think hard about what might suit me. I thank you ever so much, Bertilde replied with a cheerful yet refined smile. Next I asked to see Brunhilde. She must be busy enough preparing for her starbind ceremony, but I wish to give her a hairpin in celebration of the wedding and her retirement from my service. Bertilde, my apologies for the sudden request, but could you summon her for me? Of course, Lady Rosamond. Bertilde rose from her seat without the slightest hesitation. My sister will surely be overjoyed. I turned to my other retainers. As I said, the Ob has asked me to check something in the temple. I plan to return tomorrow, so please have Rosina, my musician, wait here for the time being. Hugo has been trapped in the dormitory kitchen for quite some time, so I will take him to the temple, then bring a replacement for him when I come back. Gracia went to contact the temple and my personnel. I watched her go out of the corner of my eye, then addressed my scholars. Hartmut, Feline, head to the temple together. Roderick, Clarissa, stay in the castle and transcribe the books that Lady Hannelore gave me. As for my knights, Daniel, Angelica, Matthias, Lorenz, I must ask you to accompany me to the temple. The rest of you, stay here for now. I respect my grandfather or the Ob. I suspect my grandfather or the Ob will summon you soon enough. The Knights Order was going to be re-evaluating and reworking its defense plans, so my knights were sure to be called upon. That was why I decided to leave Lenore and Cornelius behind. They were both arch-knights. One could make an argument for leaving Angelica in the castle as well, but I didn't see much point. As I gave out my instructions, Lisletta and Audley made short work of packing my belongings. Now that I'd grown, my nightclothes in the temple wouldn't fit me anymore, so I needed to bring some new ones. Welcome, Lady Rosamond, my temple attendant said. We have been waiting for you to return. Once they had greeted me, they finally looked up. I immediately froze. Oh my god, this is all going to be so freaking weird for everybody. Oh my god, how are Benno and Let's going to react to this? Oh my god. I even heard a few gasps. They were watching me, but not in the way one would stare at something repulsive, nor in the way my retainers had quietly accepted my new form. Instead, their expressions were ones of reverence. They reminded me of the looks Melkor had given me after swallowing so much of Hartmut's propaganda. They've all been brainwashed! Thank you, everyone, I replied. Indeed, welcome back, Lady Rosamond, Monica said, her eyes sparkling. I see that Lord Hartmut was telling the truth. You really have received a blessing from the gods and grown into a beauty. Sort of. I did get a blessing from Onwalks, the god of growth, but, not in the way that you guys would like. Oh, boy. I wavered, unsure how to respond. Hartmut had ranted non-stop about my safety and mana growth, and it was thanks to him that nobody was staring at me in disgust. Most had seen his constant blathering as a source of concern, but I couldn't deny the role he had played in helping me live normally again. I understand that. I really do. But it's so hard to be grateful. Fran spoke next. I must admit I am so used to your more youthful appearance that this comes as a surprise to me, but I am glad to see you have grown at last. Never have I seen anyone more beautiful, Gil added. Aww! That's sweet. Fran was celebrating with a quiet smile, while Gil was praising me with clenched fists and a look of slight embarrassment. They had both served me from the very beginning, and that thought I couldn't help but smile. I appreciate your kind words, I said. Gil worked with Fritz to unload my luggage from the castle while I started toward the High Bishop's chambers. Along the way, I told Fran and Zom about my plans for tomorrow. The winter coming-of-age ceremony is fast approaching, Fran noted. Will your new ceremonial robes be ready by then, or should we ask Lord Melkor to perform in your place? My robes should not need to be replaced. They were designed so that I could continue to wear them even as I grew. The problem is that I won't have anything else to wear until the alterations to my normal clothes are complete. I shall return to the castle tomorrow to have my measurements taken and order new apparel. Please ask the Gilbert Company to join us. Once my new measurements have been taken, they would alter my temple clothes accordingly. If you have business in the castle tomorrow, why have you come back to the temple? To investigate the Bible's key. New discoveries require that I give it another look. We soon arrived at my chambers. Nicola had made me some tea while I sipped while waiting for Fran to fetch the key. Daniel, Angelica. My apologies, but could you circle the lower city's gates and ask whether anyone wearing silver cloth has entered the city, I asked. Tell the guards to be on the lookout for any such individual, but not to cause a fuss if any should appear. Instead, they should contact the Knight's Order right away. If anyone does arrive wearing silver cloth, they are most likely to be a high-ranking noble, so I would advise against trying to arrest them on the spot. Yes, my lady. Daniel and Angelica turned on their heels and immediately left the room, while Matthias muttered, Lady Rosemine, do you mean... We had first discovered the silver cloth and gave Gerlach's summer estate, so it wasn't hard to put the pieces together. Bad actors with mana might be infiltrating Ehrenfest. The feast celebrating spring ended just before I returned, did it not? The snow will soon melt, and we will need to be on guard against carriages. Matthias briskly stepped in front of me, knelt, and crossed his arms in front of his chest. Lady Rosemine, please let me trouble the Gerlach. During our previous investigation, we uncovered several small cabins hiding magic tools. Lord Bonifacius set several traps so that we could tell if anyone tried to access them. I would also ask to check these traps. I shall ask Grandfather. In any case, the Knight's Order will need to go with you. I sent an ordinance relaying Matthias' request. Bonifacius was busy enough working on Ehrenfest's defenses with Karlstadt and Sylvester, so he would send someone from the Knight's Order to Gerlach in his place. Right? I was just thinking that someone should check them, he replied. It only made sense that I should do it. We can't risk someone else triggering them after triggering them all. Matthias, prepare plenty of rejuvenation potions. We'll go there at once and return tomorrow. Bonifacius intended to fly straight to Gerlach and then straight back at maximum speed, chugging as many rejuvenation potions as necessary. I took several kinds of rejuvenation potions from my hidden room and gave them to Matthias, who looked to be in the 4th stage of grief. You may use these, I said. I can guarantee their efficacy. Still, are you sure about this? Keeping up with my grandfather will not be easy. I made the request in the first place, so... Matthias paused. Yes, I will go. I do not want any more harm to come to Ehrenfest. I shall do all that I can to protect you. Then he graciously accepted the rejuvenation potions. It was all well and good that Matthias was going to Gerlach, but Lorenz wouldn't be able to guard me on his own. I started debating whether I should summon Judith, but Matthias smiled and told me not to worry. I have already contacted Judith, he said. We cannot leave you without sufficient protection, so she's coming to the temple with Lord Bonifacius. Wowee! My retainers are so extremely competent! Yes, they are! You've got good people on you, Rosemine! Just as the busily moving knights began to settle down, Fran returned. Here is the key to the Bible, he informed me. Thank you, Fran, I replied and rose from my seat. I shall retire to my hidden room to inspect it. Judith, Lorenz, there's no need for you to follow me inside. Please wait here for now. My 2 knights nodded their understanding while I stepped in my hidden room, alone. I set the key down on the table with a quiet clack, then took out my staff and chanted Grucheshite. The Book of Messinora appeared in the form of an electronic tablet, which I used to search for information about the keys used to unlock the country's Bibles. Let's see... According to the text, each key was made to match the foundation of its respective duchy. On top of the registration face stone, there was another much smaller face stone that bore the color of whichever duchy it belonged to. Oh boy. Curious, I started inspecting the key. The tiny face stone was easy enough to find, but it wasn't dark yellow. It was light violet. What? This isn't our key! It's Aaron's box! But how? We've used it so many times to open our Bible! Frantic, I continued to read as quickly as I could. As it turned out, while each key was paired with a foundation, there was no restrictions on which Bibles they could open. That makes sense. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Zents made the keys with magic, so they were all physically identical. One could use any key to open any Bible, as long as the mana register to them both was the same. To the Zents of the distant past, the Bibles for high bishops had served as instructional textbooks covering the prayers and religious ceremonies one needed to perform to obtain the Book of Messinora. Obtaining a stat-made Grucheshite was the ultimate aim, so they were far more convenient than the heavy and easily damageable Bibles. Oh, I just actually remembered something. Even if Detlende was somehow, or anybody else, was somehow able to get to Iwerman after Rosemine went there, there's no way they'd be able to get it because all the knowledge is gone. Because Ferdinand's got part of it, and Rosemine's got the rest. Because we know there's no way they could have multiple copies of the actual knowledge from a wereman unless they transcribed it. And like I said, Ferdinand only has like 30 to 40% of it. So even if he wrote down that information, it would be incomplete. So that's how, the only way we can have multiple Gritchashites is by transcribing, essentially. And so yeah, anybody else who tries to get that knowledge is out of luck. If they try to go the proper route, I mean. They're out of luck, so ha ha! Because if they had the ability to, make multiples and get the same knowledge, Rosemond should have been able to get the whole entire thing, whether Ferdinand had it or not, if that was the case. But it's not. So that means that there's only one copy, essentially, one true copy of the Book of Mestinora, and that's split between Rosemond and Ferdinand right now. So, yeah. Oh boy, we're in trouble here. Plus, there are times when the Bibles need to be swapped around, so it made sense not to have a unique key for each one. Historically, whenever a duchy was formed or destroyed, the Zent would personally take care of its foundational magic and the key required to access it. Bibles and the divine instruments in the temple, on the other hand, were often preserved and reused. Each of the keys made by the Zent was paired with a particular foundation, meaning they could only be used in the temples of their respective duchies. But as they were meant to be used in cases when the Ob suddenly died, the key didn't need to be registered with the same mana as their foundation. Anyone could use them as long as they were at the right door. So where in the world is Ehrenfest's key? I wondered a lot in the days, but the answer was already lurking in the back of my mind. Georgine had seized it long ago. I thought back to when she'd stolen our Bible. I'd noticed that its key had contained someone else's mana, but rather than investigating further, I'd simply redyed it. It had never even crossed my mind that it might belong to another duchy, especially when I'd managed to open our Bible with it. Now that we figured out the truth, isn't Ahrensbach vulnerable to having its own foundation stolen? I don't understand why Georgine would do something so risky. Because she probably thinks that nobody would be able to get into Ahrensbach. Duh! Do you really think that she wouldn't account for that? If she thought that somebody might actually get in? I doubt it. She probably thinks, oh, no one's going to be able to get in. Our defenses are airtight. I truly had no idea what she was thinking. Had she arrogantly assumed we would never notice the deception? Or did she just not care about Ahrensbach's foundation? Maybe this was all part of some elaborate plot to trap us? I really couldn't tell. One thing was clear to me, though. Georgine was so obsessed with Ehrenfest's foundation that she was willing to abandon her people and even her own daughters to reach it. Yeah, I'm assuming she thinks that she doesn't have to worry about Ahrensbach's foundation, that Deadland would have that. She would get Ehrenfest's foundation, and they'd have two duchies, essentially. That's probably what she's planning, essentially. Probably. And I would expect that, she's planning on having Sylvester and the others, trapped in the Ivory Tower and used as mana, batteries, essentially. While, if she assumes that Deadland is going to get the Gritchashite, redraw the duchy border so that way Ehrenfest and Ahrensbach are one nation, one duchy, essentially. And they would have a ton of mana instead, essentially. That's what I assume is going through her head right now. Anybody let me know? Let me know, guys. I assume that's what her plan is. Worst of all, I didn't get the impression that she planned to treasure it. Rather, it seemed to me that she only cared about taking it from Sylvester and possibly even destroying it with her own two hands. And if destroying our foundation really is her ultimate goal, the blood drained from my face. If she wanted to devastate Ehrenfest, not become its Ob, then she was my most dangerous enemy. I wouldn't be able to negotiate with her, nor would there be any way to appeal to her emotions. She would murder anyone in her path without the slightest hesitation. And as for the commoners, if she saw me try to protect them, she would probably view them as a weakness to be exploited and start attacking them relentlessly. Seizing a foundation can't be too hard if you don't care what happens next. Foundations were made of magic, and their role was as important as their name suggested. They were the literal groundwork upon which each duchy rested. As I'd learned during my Royal Academy classes, filling a foundation with mana enriched its land, while depriving it until it ran out empty would cause its cities to fall apart, and the land to morph back into a white desert. That was why one would normally either slowly replace the former Ob's mana with their own, or go through the trouble of dyeing it all at once. But if someone merely wanted to steal and destroy a foundation, they wouldn't need much time or mana. They could prepare a bunch of empty face stones to suck out all the mana and just strike the foundation with a massive spell. In either case, draining Ehrenfest would cause not just the capital city, but also the forests, farms, and such to crumble into white sand. It was unlikely that any of the commoners would survive, but if whoever was stealing Foundation didn't care about that, they could easily be able to re-dye it from there. It was normally forbidden to destroy duchies in such a manner, but the ruling Zent didn't have a Grucheshite, meaning he was unable to punish anyone who committed such crimes. Georgine understood that, which explained why she was being so forceful. We need a Zent, a proper Zent with a Grucheshite. I already had most of the Book of Messinora. If I could also obtain Jurgen Schmidt's Foundation, I would easily be able to stop Georgine, just as there existed a sizable gap between an adult Odd with a Foundation and an Archduke candidate who had merely learned about them in school. There was such much a Zent with the Foundation could do that an heir apparent with nothing but a Grucheshite could not. I want to stop Lady Georgine, but that motivation wasn't enough. My version of the Grucheshite was still incomplete, and the magic circles necessary for large-scale spells were obscured in my mind. I need to either complete the Book of Messinora or access the transcribed version for Zents located at the back of the underground archive. But how can I protect Ehrenfest? Surround the whole city with Schizaria's shield, maybe? It was an idea, but we didn't know when Georgine was going to appear, and trying to maintain the barrier non-stop wasn't feasible. There was also a chance she'd simply use Lon's enough silver cloth to slip through it. The best solution would be to capture Georgine before she got close to the Foundation. She would need to come here personally if she wanted it. There was no point trying to come up with a solution on my own, especially when I was feeling so panicked. I was just going to end up running in circles. Reporting back to Sylvester was the smartest move, so I picked up the Bible's key and stepped out of my hidden room. I discovered something important and must return post-haste to the castle, I announced. For safety's sake, I shall take the key with me. Fran, when Daniel and Angelica return, tell them to stand guard outside the temple's front and back end doors respectfully. Then go to Hartmann's chambers and inform him that he must summon Melkor to the temple. Anxiety and the measuring. I sent an ordinance to Sylvester explaining that I'd made an important discovery and needed to speak with him, then return to the castle. He replied that he would see me tomorrow after dinner. Reevaluating Ehrenfest's defense plans was his top priority right now, and with Bonifac's sudden departure to Gerlach, he couldn't afford to spare even a moment. And this is urgent! You should have told him I found something important that we have to discuss now! Considering that the usual wait time for an appointment with a noble was 3 days, this was an exceptionally quick turnaround. Still, the situation was so dire that the thought of waiting an entire day was unbearable, especially when the information was too sensitive for an ordinance. Lady Rosamund, we are so pleased you have returned sooner than anticipated, Audley said. We can discuss the clothes you are going to order tomorrow. She and Lysa then took out various boards for me to review. My sudden unexpected growth had forced them to cancel all the outfits I'd ordered for my move to the Sovereignty at the end of spring. Now, the only way I was going to have my spring and summer outfits ready in time was if we mobilized all the relevant seamstresses. There wasn't enough time for us to leisurely discuss designs when they arrived. We had to make up our minds here and now. And not just for your outerwear, Lysa continued. You are lacking socks, shoes, underclothes, everything. If we do not discuss your preferences and make some headway on which designs to use now, a single day will not be enough. Brunhilde and Grisha were summoned, as were Clarissa and Lenore of all people, and the discussions began. The changes to my facial features and the general air I exuded meant the cute clothes we had ordered before were no longer suited me. Their designs would need to be completely reworked. Redying cloth is a time-consuming endeavor. Would you consider using some knot sourced from your Renaissance? No, I would not, I replied. How am I to count her among my personnel if I do not use her cloth? I do not want her to feel out of place after we move, so let us think carefully about these designs. Since I had already been in the process of growing before my encounter with the Wehrman, the flowery cloth my mama dyed was already more mature in style than that used to make my earlier outfits. Surely we could still use it in some capacity. Could we base my new clothes on the ones I'm borrowing from Brunhilde, I suggested? She has already expertly incorporated my trends into her designs. It should save us much time compared to starting from scratch. I pinched the skirt I was currently wearing to demonstrate. We wouldn't have much trouble replicating the designs, but my hair and skin tone weren't the same as Brunhilde's, so we need to put more thought into the cloth we used. If we can, Lady Rosamund, I would appreciate the chance to add something unique to your new clothes. We cannot have you wear exactly the same attire as one of your retainers. In other words, because I needed to introduce trends, it was better that I add something to Brunhilde's clothes rather than simply replicate them. I paused to consider what I could do, but no matter how much I tried to focus, my thoughts kept wandering to Georgine and the temple. I don't blame her. Preparing my clothes was an urgent issue. I understood that, but this was no time to discuss them. Just as I tried to swallow the indescribable anxiety bubbling up my throat, I remembered something I could use to connect Ahrensbach and my clothes, the cloth that Ferdinand had sent me. What if we use the cloth from Ahrensbach, I said. It is thin enough that it should be ideal for summer clothing. We could stack petals on the skirt, and if we layer the sleeves like this, the dye patterns beneath will appear transparent, making the garments feel entirely unique. Oh, what a wonderful idea, Bertilli replied. I would very much like to wear such clothes. She picked up the patterned cloth, a sparkle in her eyes, and started to layer it as suggested. The others looked on lovingly, but had to remind her that these were my clothes, not hers. Once we'd settled on a rough design to streamline tomorrow's meeting with the seamstresses, it was time for dinner. I'd asked to have mine brought to my room, not wanting the others to see my embarrassing lack of coordination, and then ate at my own pace. The precise and delicate movements necessary to eat gracefully was simply beyond me in this new body. Anytime I tried to slice into the meat, my cutlery screeched against the plate, and when I eventually managed to bring a morsel up to my mouth, I would sometimes jam it into my cheek by mistake. Good Lord. You seem far more comfortable than yesterday, Lazletta said in an attempt to reassure me. Perhaps, I replied, though I still have a long way to go. Once I'd eaten, I bathed and climbed into bed. Tomorrow I would finally have a chance to speak with Sylvester, but Dias would also return with Bonifacius, hopefully bearing some good news. You look a tad unwell, Lady Rosamine. Did you get much sleep? Lazletta, it would seem Schlafdrum did not graze me with his blessing last night. An awful nightmare had jolted me awake. In it, I'd warned Sylvester of the impending danger too late, and the consequences had shaken me to my core. Still anxious, I went to the hall where I was going to be measured. Florencia, Elvira, Brunhilde, Charlotte, and their retainers had gathered so that I could order my spring and summer clothes all at one go. We had decided to break our day into chunks, taking care of the main garments in the morning before moving on to the shoes and accessories in the afternoon, but I was still met with a huge crowd when I arrived. Lady Rosamine is here. The seamstresses reacted to my entrance in one or two ways. They looked either completely taken aback or completely unfazed. It was easy to tell which of them knew me well and which of them I'd never interacted with before. Tuli was among the shocked-looking seamstresses. She was able to come to the castle now that she had come of age. It was important that she felt comfortable here. After all, she would need to enter the royal palace when she accompanied me to the sovereignty. This came at no surprise, considering her role as my craftswoman, but she really was moving up in the world. Look, Tuli, look! I'm all grown up! The moment I saw her, the anxiety eating away at me vanished, replaced with complete happiness. I stood up straight in an attempt to look even taller, but not for long. The fear that I might suddenly collapse brought me back to my senses. In an attempt to reinforce the regal air I now exuded, I approached my chair as carefully and as gracefully as I could. Bertilde, oddly, I said, please inform my mothers of the designs we decided upon yesterday. Lazletta agreed to attend to my measuring. The others would discuss which clothes to order while my new measurements were being taken. I understood. Audley explained today's schedule, then the Gilberta Company seamstresses divided themselves between the two groups. Tuli came over to me with a tape measure in hand. Will you be the one measuring me? I asked. Yes, my lady. The hairpins I made will need to complement whatever designs are chosen. Tuli then started to take my measurements with the help from another seamstress and wrote them all down on a board. Messengers from the temple informed us that your growth was the result of blessings from the gods. Looking at these numbers, they certainly were not exaggerating. Indeed, my new appearance was a blessing from Onwalks, the god of growth. But none of my clothes fit me anymore. I gently touched the ornament in my hair. At least I can still use your hairpins. Tuli gave me a bright smile. I designed them to be usable for a very long time. I'm not as tall as Tuli. Am I still on the shorter side? Possibly. Nobody here knew this, but Tuli and I were sisters. I couldn't help but compare our heights. I'd been determined to beat her for the longest time, but not even Onwalk's blessing could give me the advantage. She's your older sister. Of course she's going to probably be a bit taller than you. Well, it's a possibility, because sometimes the younger sibling ends up taller than the older sibling. But not in this case, apparently. Actually, she could still grow. I was so extremely worried about you when we were told to stop working under orders, Tuli admitted. I am so relieved to see you are well. Well, the dangerous parts are yet to come. As it stood, nothing had actually happened yet. Our suspicions that Georgine had our key and was planning an attack during spring prayer were just that. Suspicions. If someone accused us of having a persecution complex, we wouldn't be able to argue. Tuli, no matter what happens, I will protect you. She froze, and the professional smile she wore when dealing with nobles started to waver as if she had come to a sudden realization. I gave a more genuine smile to calm her. Once my measurements had been taken, we began to focus entirely on the designs. We had discussed them before, but now it was time to make up our minds. Sister, which designs would you prefer? Charlotte asked. This one is splendid. I would also quite like to incorporate into my autumn clothes, so it has my recommendation. Before I could respond, Elvira chimed in. If you wish to match Rosamine, why not wear similar clothes at the Royal Academy? Our meeting was interspersed with short breaks and more casual conversation, and as expected, it ended up consuming my entire day. I still need to speak with Sylvester. How to protect them. So, what's this discovery of yours? Sylvester asked. We had eaten dinner and were now sitting in his office, which had already been clear to people. Ehrenfest's foundation was not something to be discussed in the presence of others. Was there a trap on the key? Our key was swapped, I said. The one I possess now belongs to Ahrensbach. What? He frowned and squinted down at the key I'd brought with me. I held it out to him and pointed at its small face stone. This face stone here should match the color of the duchy it belongs to. This is Arensbach's color, is it not? I explained that I didn't know why Arensbach had made the swap and that I suspected Georgine wanted to destroy Ehrenfest rather than become its ob. Now seemed as good a time as any, so I also slipped in a few complaints that the whole ordeal was giving me nightmares. You don't know why we've got their key? Sylvester repeated dryly. Well, now they can make all sorts of accusations. They can say that we are targeting Arensbach, that Ferdinand is trying to bring chaos to their duchy, in spite of the royal decree, and that they have no choice but to invade us and retrieve their key. In one fell swoop, Arensbach would denounce Ehrenfest and show the rest of the country that they had good reason to attack us. Perhaps they would even drag Sylvester's name through the dirt by claiming he had stolen the key while visiting for the funeral, using information about the temple fed to him by Ferdinand and me. Then this is serious, I exclaimed. How is Sylvester acting so calm? Yes, it is, and that's why I'm putting so much thought into our defense plans. The problem is we don't know when they're going to attack, and we won't last long if we try to stay on high alert until they do. If you're too worried to sleep, make some magic tools that would serve as traps. Your main focus should be preparing for the adoption, but, yeah, would you say that you're almost ready? I gave a vague smile. We'd just gathered everyone's personnel together in a desperate rush to order my clothes. It would be a stretch to say that I was even close to being ready. Is there any way I can accelerate the adoption process? I mused. If we could get me into the royal family and on the throne, we'd open up so many more avenues. Above all else, I wanted the Zent transcription that was resting all alone in the back of the underground archive. Having a complete version of the Grutterschite free of all the random memories and containing only the knowledge essential to performing knightly duties, or kingly duties, would assist me massively right now. Your move to the sovereignty will depend on your preparations and your own enthusiasm. That said, protecting Ehrenfest's foundation is my duty as an hob. Getting the Zent to do it for me is out of the question, especially when it could also mean putting an even greater burden on you. But you should use every tool at your disposal. Sylvester shook his head, an unmistakable glimmer in his dark green eyes. Look, Rosamund, I won't say you're wrong to think that, but you need to understand that the Zent's power exists for the sake of the entire country. There's nothing wrong with the Zent choosing to help Ehrenfest, but becoming the Zent to protect our foundation, that's a lot more problematic if you ask me. Were I ever to become the Zent, I would need to protect every duchy. That includes Arensbach, Klassenburg, and all the lesser and middle duchies that had slandered Sylvester and treated the temple with contempt. There was a chance that I would even need to isolate Ehrenfest if doing so would save the rest of the country. Rosamund, do you really think you could manage as a Zent? Yes, you're fiercely protective of those close to you, but you aren't at all considerate of anyone else. A ruler who cares only about Ehrenfest and dismisses the needs of the country as a whole will earn more ire than you can even imagine. If such discontent is allowed to fester long enough, the people might even decide to eliminate you. I dislike socializing and faction politics so much that I was shirking them even here in Ehrenfest, and my lack of noble common sense meant that chaos followed me wherever I went. According to Sylvester, by becoming the Zent, I would cause that chaos to spread all across Jürgensmit. You chose to become my daughter to protect your family. Back then, your only other choice was to be executed, but you have so many more options now. There are ways to take down my sister without you becoming the Zent, you know. And more than that, protecting Ehrenfest's foundation is my obligation, not yours. Knowing all that, would you still seek to take the throne? I stared down at my hands. Above all else, I wanted to protect the people I cared about, and to do that I needed power. That had always been true. Even my search for the Grutterschite had only been so that I could save Ferdinand from being deemed guilty by association. My answer to this question, to whether I wanted to take the throne and the heavy burden that came with it, was painfully obvious. I've got no desire to become the Zent and rule Jürgensmit. I just want more ways to protect the people I care about, I said, speaking more casually now. If someone else could take the throne, I'd give up my claim in a heartbeat. I wouldn't take a position that would cut down my reading time and make it harder for me to get new books unless I absolutely had to. Obviously not. That's my whole point, Sylvester snorted. Then he leaned back in his chair, looking similarly relaxed. Hold off on going to the sovereignty for as long as you can. Until the date you agreed upon has passed, and they're starting to get antsy. I don't care if they only want you on the throne for a month or two. You shouldn't willingly become Zent when you neither want nor have the resolve to see it through. To become the Zent, I would need to make a public announcement during the Archduke Conference that I'd obtain the Grutterschite, earn the recognition of the Sovereign High Bishop, and take over Jürgensmith's foundation. Right now, I was a mere Zent candidate with a fragmented book of Mestanora and only a partial understanding of what the role entailed. He continued, make it clear that you obtain the Grutterschite against your will at the royal family's command, and if you have anyone talented around you, force your work upon them. Otherwise, you'll get more and more tedious jobs forced onto you. Sylvester, I cried, so taken aback that my voice cracked. What are you saying? His arms crossed, Sylvester turned away from me. Those meetings during the Archduke Conference made it clear that not even the royals are all on the same page. Even if you did manage to obtain the Grucheshite, I doubt they or the top-ranking duchies would really accept you as a Zent. At most, they'd use you for your own benefit. They don't have any reservations about manipulating those of us from the lower-ranking duchies. If you have more to say, then say it. I guess this is the last time we'll get to be truly honest with each other, huh? And more than that, it completely slipped my mind that indirect language doesn't work with you. Sylvester looked at me with his expression now as honest as his attitude. I won't mince my words. It turns my stomach that you, of all people, are being forced to carry the entire country on your shoulders. As a commoner, all you wanted was to read, and you were only baptized as a noble to protect your family. The most you should be doing is giving blessings in the temple while the orphans watched in amazement, spreading the printing industry far and wide, securing new books, and discussing business plans to develop Ehrenfest with your merchant friends. These were the greatest freedoms Ehrenfest had given me, things that I would absolutely never be allowed to do in other duchies. My chest heated up as it became clear to me that Sylvester understood what I wanted most. Does the country's survival depend on you, he said. Maybe. But it isn't the royals' job to keep Jurgen Schmidt going? They've been cocky enough ordering Ferdinand to move to Ahrensbach and trying to snap you up when they don't even have a Grucheshite. The least they can do is bear the country's burden themselves instead of thrusting those on you as well. During the Archduke Conference, the royals had apparently insinuated that Ehrenfest's shortage of nobles and mana was our own fault, since we had carried out an internal purge and ultimately failed to control a dispute between siblings. That's rich. They've crippled the entire country with the purge, and it was a dispute between siblings that cost them the Grucheshite in the first place. That's true. Sylvester had needed to cut ties with Veronica and Besenwatst, even at the cost of crippling his own support base, and our purge had played a necessary role in clearing out what had remained of the corruption they nourished. It was true that Ehrenfest was experiencing a mana shortage, and that our nobles were caught in a state of confusion, but even then we didn't regret having carried out the purge. The confusion wasn't even our fault. Someone had decided to take Sylvester's greatest pillar of support, Ferdinand, away from us at a crucial moment. If not for those royal decrees, Ehrenfest would have been in a much better position right now. Rosamund, when you get that Grucheshite, slam it right in their faces and tell them to deal with their own damn problems. That's what I'd do. I can already imagine it. Consider it yours, then, I would shout. The royal family can deal with its own issues. Then I'd throw the Grucheshite straight at Anastasio's face. They would all be shocked at that. Like, someone actually did that? How the nerve? I clapped a hand on my mouth, trying to hide the laughter that was slipping out of me, but it was too late. Sylvester had seen everything. Wouldn't that feel good or what? He said with a grin. I wouldn't want to damage a precious book, but it really would feel amazing. I want to hit Prince Anastasius square in the jaw for his stupid remark that Ehrenfest should deal with its own problems. We laughed together, enjoying the thought. Once things had quieted down, I gave Sylvester a studying look. So, how can we take down Lady Georgine without me becoming the Zent? If we pay no mind to the consequences, then there's an option staring us right in the face. It has been for over a year. Sylvester's expression then twisted into a severe grimace. If we had another solution available to us, why hadn't we explored it yet? It's simple, he continued, looking as serious as I'd ever seen him. We order Ferdinand to kill her by any means necessary. That's why he went to Ahrensbach in the first place. Send word when you wish it done, he said to me. But I don't want him put through that, would you? Would you let him dirty his hands and act as though he has nothing to do with Ehrenfest? Would you leave him to face the consequences alone, declaring him an Ahrensbach citizen and claiming that the duchy's internal strife has nothing to do with us? I frantically shook my head. Never! She's never going to do that. She's not going to kill him, that's for sure. That's why others told me I'm too soft to be an Ob, Sylvester said with a wry smile. But I was glad he wasn't the kind of person who would make such harrowing orders without a second thought for his duchy or otherwise. He told me to cut ties with him the moment I thought it necessary. To cast him aside even though we're brothers, but it's such a tough call to make that you can't make it either means you're not suited to be a mob either, or the Zent for that matter. Is there no other way we can stop Lady Georgine? I asked nervously. Sylvester folded his arms. They won't be nearly as reliable, but I've got a few more ideas. The problem is, if we care about what happens next, we can't attack her before she attacks us. We got no choice but to bolster our defenses. The situation gets even more complicated when we consider how to make it benefit Ehrenfest and minimize the casualties. You don't want the temple to turn into a battlefield with the Grey Priests and orphans in the front firing line, do you? Of course not. The temple is like my second home, and the Rosemine workshop is there too. I would need to protect them at all costs. I'll put everyone through evacuation drills before Lady Georgine makes her move. Sylvester nodded, having expected my answer. That's going to require a bit more work and mana. Thankfully for us, the snow is still thick enough to impede any carriages. And chances are that Ahrensbach only recently finished its feast celebrating spring. Danger might be on the horizon, but it won't be getting here today or tomorrow. Instead of getting all worked up, we should think about how we're going to overcome it. It was a long way from Ahrensbach to Ehrenfest's temple. Sylvester assured me that if a small group was heading for us, the snow would delay it, and if a large group was on its way under the guise of getting Ahrensbach's key back, they wouldn't be able to hide. For now, we made the call to keep 2 knights stationed at each gate, Sylvester said. I also told the soldiers to be on the lookout for Silver Cloth in case someone tries to sneak in through the lower city. They'll send a warning signal to the Knight's Order at the first sign of anything suspicious. I see. Already executing a plan, are you? Sylvester replied, stroking his chin. By the way, where is the temple's door to the Foundation? Protecting the Foundation is important, but I can't blatantly assign knights to the temple and risk revealing its location. That's why I want to have either you or Melkor always stay there with some guards. There might not be many of you, but we can compensate for that with some magic tools. A door is in the temple's bookroom, behind a bookcase that can only be opened with the High Bishop's key. Carved into the wall, there is a statue of Mestanora. The Bible in its hand can apparently be moved to reveal a keyhole. That same bookcase was where I'd found a box of letters from Georgine. It was possible that Besenwatz had noticed it when looking for a secure hiding place. Of course, I continued, I've yet to try it out, but I'm sure it works. Are there any hallways one would absolutely need to pass through to get there from the temple entrance? I'm thinking of setting up a teleporter. Only archdukes were able to place magic circles that could teleport people. Sylvester must have wanted to stick one in Georgine's way to get rid of her. I'd started to envision the layout of the temple. There were 3 gates in total. The back gate on the lower city side, the front gate for carriages, and the nobles' gate connected to the nobles' quarter. From there, those who wanted to get into the temple proper had several options, including the chapel, the front door, the back door leading into the orphanage basement, the entrances leading to the nobles' gate, and the side door for chefs and such. And the path to the bookroom can change drastically depending on which entrance one uses. You could place it right at the entrance to the bookroom, but that's about it. Only those who are registered with the temple can go inside. I remember crying my eyes out when the invisible barrier wouldn't let me through. Ahrensbach's silver cloth can get them through the duchy barrier. I'm expected to work just as well against that one. Using its mana, Sylvester had created a barrier around Ehrenfest City to keep nobles from other duchies from entering without permission. The problem was it didn't work against those wearing silver cloth, and it was easy to guess that anyone who used this method to sneak in would continue wearing the cloth all the way to the temple to guard them against mana. In that case, won't the silver cloth also block the teleporter you want to set up? Yeah, but Georgine's gonna have to remove the cloth no matter what to teleport to the Foundation. I guess placing it right in front of the bookcase is best then. To be safe, she'll wear that cloth for as long as she physically can. Then when she finally casts it aside, assured of victory, she'll get teleported away. Wearing the mischievous grin of a prankster celebrating his latest pitfall, Sylvester declared, how's that for a plan? It certainly was true that the silver cloth would get in the way when coming to deal with the Foundation. No matter what, Georgine would need to take it off eventually. The thought of her getting whisked away right as she thought she'd won brought a smile to my face. It was on that note that we agreed to place the teleporter right in front of the bookcase. But, won't that placing it there inconvenience the rest of us too, I asked? Nah, I added a restriction that it only teleports those not registered to Ehrenfest. The bookroom's barrier shouldn't accept anyone from another duchy in the first place, so the teleporter won't impact anyone who enters the room properly. Is it possible that Georgine's still registered with Ehrenfest? I'm worried about that. Archducal magic allowed one to distinguish between those who registered in one's duchy and those who weren't. This meant pre-baptismal children would trigger the teleporter, but that wouldn't cause us any trouble. The pre-baptism children in the orphanage weren't allowed to enter the nobles' quarter of the temple anyway. You can't sew to save your life, huh? Sylvester asked. I'll get Florencia to make the circle then. He intended to ask Brunhilde and Charlotte to help out as well, but there was no need to waste that much time. The important thing is that she doesn't notice the teleporter, right? Leave the circle to me. I'll just need your authority to activate it once it's done. All we had to do was draw the circle with invisible ink. Ha ha ha! Yes! Use the invisible ink! Yes! All we had to do was draw the circle with invisible ink. Sylvester will need to take care of the final activation, but I wouldn't have any trouble doing the rest. It was guaranteed to be faster than sewing. You've got something devious in mind, haven't you, Rosamund? You got that look on your face. There are some things in the world you are better off not knowing. Despite everything I said, you've still managed to end up at the center of all this, Sylvester muttered, but he gave me his permission anyway. So, where should the teleporter take her, I asked. The Ivory Tower, no question about it. I'll prepare a room for her right next to Mother's. No matter how much she struggles in there, she won't be able to get out unless an Archducal family member opens the door. He continued, we should do our best to leave the temple unchanged and guide Georgine to the teleporter without giving her reason to believe something's up. I mean, we know what she's like. Rather than making a huge scene and drawing attention to herself, she'll try to carry out her plan in secret. She'll create some grand distraction to keep the Knight's Order out of the picture, then sneak into the temple. Considering everything Georgine had done behind the scenes thus far, Sylvester's theories sounded spot on. We grinned at each other, relishing the thought of her being sent to the Ivory Tower, right as she thought everything was going her way. I still want us to evacuate the temple, though, I said. I don't want anyone there to get hurt as a result of all this. My top priority is capturing my sister and the rest of her faction. To that end, I'll accept casualties in the temple and the lower city. If you don't like that, think of a way to get her to the bookroom that won't put anyone else in danger. It wouldn't be unthinkable for Georgine to get someone to guide her to the bookroom, then murder them to cover her tracks. Then her guide would need to be someone she couldn't kill. Something that can guide her, preferably something that can fight back if necessary. Ah! I shall make my own Schwartz and Weiss to guide her to the temple's bookroom. I mean, they wouldn't be able to kill it. Even if they could disable Schwartz and Weiss, it wouldn't be listed as a real casualty. It's a magic tool, so they could just recreate it. Preparing for war. Your own Schwartz and Weiss, Sylvester asked, looking thoroughly baffled. What do you mean? Where's this coming from? I explained my thought process, but not even that seemed to help. All right, he set his head in his hands. I understand that you want to guide her there with magic tools, but don't those require a plethora of elements and even more mana to operate? And don't forget you're leaving for the sovereignty at the end of spring. Who's going to fill them when you're gone? I'm betting she'll attack during spring prayer, but that's just a gut feeling. I don't have any proof. Eep. The magic tools I wanted to make wouldn't require as much mana as Schwartz and Weiss, since they wouldn't have much work to do. But who would maintain them in my absence? Protecting the temple was important, but very few people had the darkness element, and the duchy wouldn't have any mana to spare once I was gone. It was unreasonable to expect them to supply the tools in the foreseeable future. Not to mention, Sylvester continued, do you honestly think my cautious elder sister would follow some strange magic tools? Even I'd find them suspicious. She won't think twice. Trust me, Schwartz and Weiss are adorable. That really doesn't matter. Just seeing them in the temple is going to arouse suspicion. Wouldn't it be more effective to have the guards carry several charms? I clapped my hands together and cried, I've got it! In other words, I should make combat-ready versions of Schwartz and Weiss that can fight with the guards. You really haven't got it. I mean, the Grey Priests have barely any mana at all, so I don't see what good our charms will do them. If we want to do this properly, we should assign knights to the temple's guards to make autonomous magic tools like Schwartz and Weiss. I vaguely remember that the two shoe mills had drawn mana from their buttons when they'd enter combat mode. Maybe we could minimize costs by having the guards carry face stones brimming with mana and telling them to activate our magic tools only when necessary? I decided that I would check the Book of Mesnor when I next had the chance. Maybe it contained a hint of some kind? You can leave protecting the temple to me, I said. For now, focus on what to do if Georgine reaches the foundation. Oh, and set up some traps, of course. You can make a simple gate with Entwicon, stack something heavy atop it, then have the whole thing collapse on her as soon as she passes through. Or you could scatter marbles, small round stones, all across the path she'll need to take. Yeah, I'll make sure we've got some traps in place, though I'd rather she not get near the foundation in the first place. Sylvester replied, then he muttered, if she doesn't come through the border gate, where can we expect her to attack from? From a geographical standpoint, Gerlach made the most sense, and on that note, have you spoken with Grandfather and Matthias, I asked. There weren't any traces of entry, coupled with the absence of any tracks in the snow, and the fact that Boniface's instincts didn't notice anything strange, it seems safe to conclude that nobody's visited the province. By using lawns enough silver cloth, one could pass through a duchy's barrier without the Archduke noticing. The catch, of sorts, was that one needed to be completely covered, preventing the use of staffs or high beasts. It was hard to imagine anyone traveling through Ehrenfest on foot, so our unwanted guest would almost certainly be using a vehicle of some kind. I paused and thought we might not know how they're going to attack, but would it not be wise to have the Archducal family's retainers start making as many rejuvenation potions and magic tools as they can? Since you're part of the generation that participated in treasure-stealing dinner, I expect you know what a crucial role magic tools can play in a battle. The outcome of a battle was often based on the number of magic tools each side had at its disposal. That was why I wanted to use Bonifacius and Riarda's generation as much as possible. I continued, how about the magic tools I used during my third year? They worked against Dunkelfelger's knights, so I'm sure they'd work here. The students who brewed them should still remember the recipe. Hartmann worked them to the bone, after all. From there, I elaborated on the immense power of magic tools. Those that weren't simply mana-based attacks, such as flashbangs and insect swarms, could work even on those wearing silver cloth. Treasure-stealing dinner, huh? Sylvester murmured. Indeed, the war game is based on trying to steal another duchy's foundation or protect your own. That's why I'd advise you to consult grandfather's generation and go through the documents that Ferdinand gave us. Though our main concern is going to be that silver cloth. Yeah, you have to worry about her going through the gates. You have to worry about them, going behind beast once they get to that point. And, what other ways could they get in? Don't they have that sewer system? Does that go through the entire duchy? Or is that just in, the towns and cities? If it's just in the towns and cities, they would just have to get through the barrier, find the closest village or geeb or whatever, and go through that way. I don't know. Let me know. Lancelot's silver cloth was the perfect way to counter nobles attacking with mana, but it was basically useless against anyone who wasn't using stab weaponry. If we want to take our enemies by surprise, I said, our best bet might be to employ combatants. Soldiers are used to normal weaponry. Perhaps they could attack any silver cloth individuals trying to pass through the gate, or throw excrement on their cloth to force them to remove it. Sylvester grimaced. You're pretty savage, you know that? No normal noblewoman would suggest throwing waste at people. To be honest, I thought my strangers was old news by now. Dunkelfelger's knights were just as appalled when they saw my dinner strategies, but victory is more important than anything else, right? Ferdinand even mentioned in his documents that noble courtesy and upfront honesty have no place in battle. Those who had attended the Royal Academy alongside Ferdinand had embraced that mindset under his leadership, while Ehrenfest's current students had adopted it as a result of our dinner game against Dunkelfelger. We had to surprise our opponents to compensate for our inferior strength. Sylvester, I said, can I send Ferdinand some food and a letter? He might have some advice for us. Won't my sister notice? I'd rather we make it clear that they're from Ehrenfest as a whole. We don't want to draw unnecessary attention to you. I didn't think it was a big deal since I'd just recovered from a supposed illness, but I wasn't going to complain if Sylvester wanted to take the lead. As long as Ferdinand receives them, that's fine with me, I said. I trust you will speak with the students and Archducal retainers. I'm going to be in my workshop with my retinue. That marked the end of our discussion, so I took my leave. We were going to need all sorts of magic tools, and it seemed wise to get started on them right away, because you never know when she's going to show up. She could show up in a few days. Who knows? I started returning to my room, thinking that I needed to gather everyone I'd stationed in the temple, only to find Hartman waiting for me with my other retainers, a broad smile on his face. Hartman, why are you here? I asked. I entrusted matters of the temple to Lord Melkor and his retainers. How enter a discussion with the Ob? Is there anything I can help you with? He was imploring me with his eyes. Please grace me with your orders. I took an unconscious step back, not wanting to escape the pressure he was exuding, but at the same time I needed him and Clarissa to help me brew magic tools. I plan to invite the scholars to my library to brew, I said. We must prepare for our upcoming battle against Lady Georgine by making various magic tools and rejuvenation potions. If we are preparing for war, should we not summon all retainers serving the Archducal family? Even knights in attendance can perform the more simple brews. You managed to call upon everyone, not just the scholars. As I recalled, the magic tools we'd used against Dunkelfelger had all been made by apprentice scholars. The brews had simply been too complex for the apprentice knights in attendance. Brewing classes are mandatory for all students, so yes, even knights can make basic rejuvenation potions as per what they learned. Requesting their aid will allow the scholars to dedicate their time and mana to brew harder brews. He was right that we didn't need to rely entirely on the scholars when it came to rejuvenation potions. Quantity was key. I nodded to turn to look at my other retainers, only to find Angelica vigorously shaking her head. I'm a guard knight, she said. I shall guard you, Lady Rosemine. Fear not, Angelica, I was never going to ask you to brew, though I may ask you to gather in the noble forest. She placed a hand on her chest, clearly relieved, and smiled. I could not ask for a better charge, Lady Rosemine. Your praise does not please me in the slightest. I am just glad you understand me so well. We weren't exactly on the same page, but there was nothing more I could do about that. I gave Angelica the same smile she always gave me and moved the conversation along. Our plan is for the lay nobles and men nobles to head to the temple workshop to make rejuvenation potions and simple magic tools for the knights going into battle. Meanwhile, the archnobles will devote themselves to more complex brews in my library's workshop. Are there any objections? This arrangement should complement the quality of the ingredients in each workshop. Plus, it will allow Daniel and Feline to remain in contact with Melkor's retainers if they need further instruction on temple matters. The temple was currently in the midst of preparing for spring prayer. I wasn't going to be involved this year owing to my unexpected absence and the likelihood that I might be ordered to move to the sovereignty at any moment. In my stead, Feline was going to attend with Daniel in my temple attendance. Hartman, will you be attending spring prayer? I asked. As a name-sworn retainer, I plan to return to your side the moment you come back to us. That is why I concluded almost the entirety of the temple handover during the winter. Arrangements have been made for Lord Melkor to perform the spring prayer, the lower city's winter coming-of-age ceremony as High Bishop. Your excessive competence never fails to surprise me. It also scared and grossed me out a bit, but I elected not to mention that. His competence was something to be praised. I shall treasure your kind words, Lady Rosemine. Hartman was not the only one working hard, Clarissa interjected. Over the winter, I organized the ingredients sent from the Royal Academy and moved them to the library's workshop, improved my supportive circles, and made extra fey paper in case Lord Ferdinand requested more. Though she was blatantly vying for my attention, the work she'd done would aid us immensely in the coming battle. The extra paper she made was especially useful since I could use it with my copy and paste skill to duplicate magic circles. The more we had, the better. Excellent work, Clarissa. There was much we could do with that paper. Brewing it requires so much time and matter that I did not expect us to have any. But now I can focus on creating my own Schwartz and Weiss to defend the temple. As for the library magic tools, like Lysletta said, turning to look at my luggage for the Royal Academy, we do have one Professor Herscher sent us. I had taken ingredients to the Royal Academy to brew with, only to suddenly disappear partway through the term. Herscher had visited our dormitory to collect them, since my retainers had told everyone I was simply bedridden with a fever. She came when the Air-Infest dormitory was most panicked about your disappearance, Lysletta continued. We gave her the ingredients in exchange for her assistance in spreading our cover story. But a lack of mana and concerns about the elements kept her from finishing the brew. She ended up asking Lord Ferdinand to help during the introductory tournament, and only then was she able to finish the tool. I already have it wearing clothes. See? Inside the tool... Indeed, the tool was fully dressed. Lysletta had repurposed some of the clothing she made from Schwartz and Weiss. The tool was given only one function, searching documents, she said, giving it a specialized purpose while also omitting its capacity for speech, simplified the creation process, and minimized the amount of mana required to keep it running. There must be plenty I can learn from it then, I replied. Bring it to my library alongside the documents. Since everyone was on board with my suggestion that we should do our brewing in groups, I returned to the temple and opened up the workshop in my chambers. There, I entrusted managing the ingredients to Broderick, then established the order in which everyone would make their potions and magic tools. Next, I turned to Daniel. I would ask you to serve as an arbitrator between the knights guarding the gates and the soldiers. It might end up being the case that the soldiers are best suited to dealing with anyone using silver cloth. Understood. This was a job that only Daniel could do, owing to the respect he had earned from the soldiers. Angelica got along with them as well, but I didn't have any faith in her management skills. The knights and scholars are being split up between the library and the temple, but what about the attendants, Judith asked. Lysletta and the others may brew rejuvenation potions in the castle, or make clothes for the shoe mills I'm going to create. You should try making magic tools and rejuvenation potions that you can use as well. Once I'd given everyone their tasks, I went to my library as I could tell that Lostrom had 100 questions for me, questions that I really didn't have time to answer, so I gave him a smile, urging him not to ask them. I continued in my workshop and took out the magic tool that Herscher and Ferdinand had made for me. It was a light green shoe mill. I touched it all over while reading Herscher's research notes to see what it was capable of. It really was designed to search for documents. In any case, the life element was necessary to make autonomous magic tools, and anyone who hoped to make their own Schwartz and Weiss would absolutely need to be omni-elemental. Hartman and Clarissa ticked those boxes since they'd received all the elements after giving their names to me. Perhaps their mana capacities would cause problems, but probably not huge ones. Probably. First and foremost, I should name it, I mused aloud. I wouldn't want people confusing it with Schwartz and Weiss. It's a magic tool that searches for documents, so maybe Kensaku or Opak? Cornelius looked up from the ingredients he was cutting from my magic tools and raised a hand to get my attention. My apologies, Lady Rosemine, but Lysletta has already named that shoe mill. She calls him Adret and dotes upon him terribly. Would you mind not changing it? I would ask the same, Lenore agreed. We have all grown used to calling him Adret. Thus, I was denied the opportunity to name the light green shoe mill. Kensaku and Opak were a lot easier to understand, in my opinion, at least for those who understood Japanese and semi-obscure online database naming conventions respectfully, but I saw no reason to oppose the others' wishes. Adret would do. The combat assault shoe mills I tend to make will not search through files, I said. Instead, they will specialize in eliminating intruders and dangerous individuals. I want magic tools strong enough to protect the temple. I explained the mana-related problems Sylvester had outlined, at which point Hartman and Clarissa started clambering to advise me. Their insight was useful, but there was a certain book I wanted to consult. Hartman, Clarissa, I must check something in my hidden room. Clarissa stared at me in surprise. Could you not check it here? I got to. Merely smiled in response. Everyone here was a trusted member of my retinue, but still, I couldn't let them see the Book of Mestinora. There are some documents I cannot read anywhere else, I replied. Angelica, if you would guard the door, Hartman and Clarissa, you may begin making more paper once you finished your notes. I took Herscher's documents to my hidden room and deposited them on the table. Then I took out my staff and chanted Grutschheit. Let's see, I could try searching for information about libraries and magic tools. Too many results. I didn't know what Schwartz and Weiss's actual names were, so I tried searching them up individually. My first attempt hadn't given me the answers I'd sought, but it had taught me that libraries used so many magic tools. Based on the rows upon rows of entries, the Royal Academy's library must have been especially important. Looking at the information like this also makes it very clear what interests Ferdinand. There were gaps in the sections about the underground archive and the statue of Mestanora, but the magic tool that signaled when it was time to leave was covered in full, a sign that it hadn't interested Ferdinand at all. Given the placement of the gaps, I could guess that, unlike me, he hadn't been able to empty his mind and simply accept the knowledge bestowed upon him. He probably started thinking every time some information had caught his attention. Yep. That curiosity must have been the reason he'd ended up resisting Mestanora's knowledge. The mental image of him getting scolded by Wehrman every time he failed to clear his mind made me chuckle. Ferdinand really is awkward at the strangest times, I said with a smile. At that thought, my eyes were drawn to the leather bag containing his praise-filled magic tool. I reached over and took out the tool, eager to listen to the messages within. But when I set the bag down again, it made a quiet clicking sound. Oh, right, it's double-layered. I wonder what's inside. I touched the bag all over. It wasn't that big. From what I could tell, the source of the noise was a rough face stone of some kind stitched into the fabric of the bag. It hadn't caught my attention before, but now I was curious. Ferdinand gave this to me, right? So I must be allowed to look inside. Because the bag was double-layered, I wouldn't simply be able to open it and peer inside. I would actually need to slice into the bottom. So I created my stab, turned it into a knife, and then poured extra mana into it. The bag was made from non-conductive leather taken from a fey beast that resisted all mana, but its own. This made it somewhat similar to Lanzanoff's silver cloth, but the two weren't exactly the same. This leather was only so resistant, mana weapons could still slide through it as long as the wielder had stronger mana than the original fey beast. Silver cloth, on the other hand, blocked even the most powerful mana, but one could easily cut it up with a regular blade. This won't damage the thing inside, right? I wondered as I cut a circular hole in the base of the bag. I was pouring so much mana into my knife that it moved as easily as a hot knife through butter. Once I was done, I turned my staff back into the standard wand shape. I dismissed it entirely. My heart raced as I reached into the newly opened compartment. What had Ferdinand stashed inside? The first thing I took out was a crumpled up oval ball, an item wrapped in bright paper about 5 centimeters in diameter. There was also a small folded note. I put the ball on the table and opened up the note. It was a letter from Ferdinand. He must have been in a serious hurry at the time because the writing was extremely rushed and messy. Let's see here. Contained within this paper is the name stone of a man called Quinta. Until the day I come to retrieve it, keep it in your hidden room away from anyone else. And do not touch it, no matter the circumstances. Geez, you should have given it back to him, Ferdinand, not thrust it upon me in this roundabout way. I can't help feeling bad for this. Oh, no! Remember, Wehrman mentioned Quinta? And the only person we know he's interacted with lately is Ferdinand and her? Oh, no. Oh, I get it. I think I get what that is. Oh, no. Oh, she's figured it out. As I started to ponder why Ferdinand would send this stone to me rather than its owner, I suddenly remembered exactly who Quinta was. Wait, isn't that Ferdinand's actual name or something? Does that mean this is his name stone? Hold on a second. Then why was that note written like it was someone else's? Was there a reason he didn't feel comfortable holding on to it? If so, why stick it inside a random bag? Couldn't he have hidden it within one of our rooms here in the estate where his luggage was being kept? And why keep a name-swearing stone in the first place when he didn't have anyone to give it to? My mind was overflowing with questions. Did he give it to someone who then gave it back? I can't really imagine him giving his name to anyone, but this is his stone, so that must be what happened. I didn't understand the circumstances, but all the evidence I needed was before my eyes. Ferdinand had given me this bag before Ahrensbach had given him a hidden room. Maybe there hadn't been anywhere else for him to hide it? Was the situation so dire that he couldn't keep it on his person? And why had he given it to me, not someone else? Could it be that he trusts me that much? No way! That can't be it! He had no way of knowing that a Wehrman would tell me his true name, so maybe he just thought I wouldn't bother touching a name stone belonging to a stranger? Yeah, that seems a lot more likely. As I stared at the ball of paper, I started to feel more and more unsettled. Was Ahrensbach really so dangerous that Ferdinand couldn't look after his own name stone? I don't know what to do with this thing. The paper ball was so unsteady, but a simple prod would send it rolling off a table. Yet the stone within had the power to end a man's life. Well, now I know that Ferdinand is actually Quinta, so there's nothing stopping me from stealing his name. I'm not sure I want that weight on my shoulders, though, so I'll just leave the stone here. It didn't matter that the stone belonged to Ferdinand. I wasn't going to take anybody's name without having the resolve to carry their burdens. Moreover, this note had very clearly told me not to touch it. I just need to keep it here until the day when Ferdinand came to retrieve it. Electing to pretend that I'd never seen it in the first place, I put it back inside the bag. Ferdinand probably knew that I wouldn't be able to mess with someone else's phase stone. That was why he had given his to me in the first place. It was frustrating to think that I was dancing in the palm of his hand, but at the same time he'd still entrusted me with something immensely important. I couldn't be too annoyed with him. Sure, I'll keep it safe. But you'd better come back for it soon. Oh god, that was his name stone, and there's only one person you could probably think of that he would give his name to willingly. And that's Sylvester's father. You heard him himself. He is that desperate to respect his father's dying wish that he would put himself in harm's way in the enemy territory. This guy had to have had Ferdinand's respect so much that he would give his name to him. He had to have. I spent the following days working on my combat-ready shoe mills and on magic tools that would aid us in the coming battle. I also did evacuation drills with everyone in the orphanage and registered my library's documents with the Dread. In the end, I was able to make 3 shoe mills that would retaliate against both mana and physical attacks. They would guard the 3 temple gates and recognize the guards with face stones as their masters. According to Hartman, who assisted me in making them, there were very few people who would actually be able to create these shoe mills, since they required very rare materials and omni-elemental mana. Hartman and Clarissa were omni-elemental now that they'd given their names to me, but elements obtained through name swearing weren't even half as strong as those one had to begin with. That's why Hartman had narrowly managed to help me by re-obtaining divine protections and using the subordinate god's support to strengthen his new elements. Clarissa hadn't possessed the elemental power necessary to make one of my combat-ready shoe mills. I want to obtain new divine protections too, she protested, but we couldn't allow an unmarried young woman from the duchy to be seen entering the temple. There was also my looming departure for the sovereignty to consider, which meant we didn't have the leeway to perform another divine protections ritual. I'm sorry to have disappointed you once again, I said. Oh no, I should apologize. That you have allowed me to stay here before my wedding is generous enough. I am so very sorry for causing more trouble. You don't need to fret, Clarissa. I recognize how hard you're working as my retainer. I gazed upon those magic tools we created. If not for your extra paper, I wouldn't have been able to make this many shoe mills. You also saved us an enormous amount of mana by narrowing down their functions and removing their capacities for speech. You might not have been able to create them, but you still played a crucial role in ensuring their efficiency. Your work was flawless, if you ask me. By normal standards, they still require a lot of mana, Hartman interjected. To keep these shoe mills active, an archnoble would need to replenish them once every couple days. Cornelius nodded. We can all agree that they're going to be useful, but we should only activate them when there's an emergency. Yes, that sounds best, I replied. We would need to save as much mana as possible, but still. Could we really run all 3 shoe mills with a single archnoble? Schwartz and Weiss were having to rely on 3. In the end, we came to a reasonable agreement. The shoe mills would remain with the guards as per our original plan, but would only be activated when someone suspicious arrived at one of the temple's gates or when a rot signaling the Knight's Order was fired in the lower city. Okay, We're only halfway! We're over halfway! I can't wait! I will see you guys in the next one. I am so sorry that I wasn't able to do more.